President-elect Joe Biden is calling on the General Services Administration to authorize his presidential transition despite pushback from President Trump. Without this authorization by the GSA, Mr. Biden does not have access to information that he needs for his pandemic response plan and is unable to coordinate with federal health experts. He expressed his concerns to frontline healthcare workers during a virtual roundtable on Wednesday.
There's a whole lot of things that are we just don't have available to us, which unless it's made available soon, we're going to be behind by weeks or months being able to put together the whole initiative.
For more now, I want to bring in Kathryn Dunn Tenpas. She is the Senior Research Director for the White House Transition Project, which is the Biden transition team. She's also a Senior Fellow at the University of Virginia's Miller Center. Thank you for being with us, Kathryn. So give us a sense of what's going on within the Biden transition team. What's at the top of your agenda right now?
Well, I think that their biggest issue right now is to start to vet personnel. In the beginning of any transition, the biggest issue is finding people to fill roughly 2,000 to 4,000 political appointments, 1,200 of which have to be confirmed by the Senate. And I assume that they've been doing this for months, maybe over the course of June. And then after he was formally nominated as the Democratic nominee, he received a tranche of resources from the GSA. So they're probably working a lot on personnel at this point, doing the best they can to vet their potential candidates and decide who should get the key jobs in the government. Apart from that, I think there's probably a great deal of frustration. Important laws were passed in the aftermath of the terrorist attacks in 9/11, which recommended that the transition be started early, that there be more national security briefings for the incoming president, and that all the departments and agencies participate in preparing briefing materials for the incoming president and their staff. And because the GSA has held this up, they've lost precious time over 2 weeks now. I think it's worthwhile pointing out that a transition is only 78 days to replace a large number of senior staffs all across the government. Now we're down to, a little over 60 days to do this work, and there's still no end in sight. It's not clear what the GSA needs to see in order to ascertain that Vice President Biden will be the president-elect. But every day that goes by is precious time that they can't spend getting up to speed on national security issues, getting up to speed on the coronavirus and Operation Warp Speed and implementing the vaccine, in addition to their own priorities, like climate change, for instance, or dampening all of the racial tension in this country. They have their own issues that they want to pursue as well. But right now, they are not given access to any of the agencies and the departments, and that's where they can really get the materials and start to conduct interviews in order to get up to speed.
Yeah, Kathryn, I can understand the eagerness on the part of the Biden team to want to get in there and start working on some of these problems right away. But you said it's 2 weeks after election. We spent all the time running up to the election urging Americans, and the president-elect was among the people who was saying this, to be calm, to let the process play out, to not expect an immediate turnaround after election night for the results. So even though there's work that can be done and an eagerness to do it, why not just wait until these election results are certified?
Well, I think it would be one thing if the results were so close as they were in the year 2000, when it really came down to one state, and ultimately it came down to 537 votes. We are not even in that world at all in terms of the closeness of the election. It simply isn't that close in any of the swing states. So it's one thing not to ascertain an election when it's that close as it was in 2000. It's another thing to ascertain an election when all of the networks have projected that Joe Biden will be the victor, and that it's likely none of the margins are close enough to give sort of the Trump campaign and the Trump supporters any hope. So I sort of agree with you. Like, everybody knew it would take a while to process the votes. There were a lot of mail-in votes. It was just a different election year. And I understand there needed to be patience on election night and maybe in the day or two after. But by the Saturday after the election, some of the networks had declared that Joe Biden would be the president-elect. And so I honestly think that at that point, which would have been 5 days after the election, that would have been a reasonable point at which the head of the GSA, Emily Murphy, could have ascertained that Joe Biden would be the president-elect.
So given all that we've talked about with the pandemic, given what you've said about Biden and Harris being interested and concerned about their ability to start to talk to these health workers, how are you working around the challenges from the Trump administration?
Right. So I personally am not on the Biden transition team. I sort of write reports and try to help incoming administrations. But I do know, just from reading various reports, that they're trying to meet with sort of experts in the national security field. They're meeting with healthcare experts, and they're trying to do the best they can to sort of bone up on the issues of the day. Having served in government for 8 years as vice president, having been a senator for 32 years, he certainly knows whom to talk to and what he needs to do to gear up to be president. It's just that it didn't need to be this way. This is the first time in 220 years where we've had a president that doesn't concede. It's the first time since the new laws have been passed to ease the transition and to make it more worthwhile and to help presidents get boned up on national security issues that it hasn't happened. And so I think that's the cause for angst. I mean, it's a time in our country where we're struggling to fight a major pandemic. Over 250,000 people have passed away. We are dealing with an incredibly volatile economy. Lots of people have lost jobs. The levels of racial tension seem to be higher than they have been in many years. So it's just this moment is not an opportune time to hold up the works and hold up the resources that an incoming president would like to have.
All right, Kathryn, as you said, you write these reports, and lawmakers from both sides of the aisle have said that Mr. Biden needs intelligence briefings. Is the Biden transition team concerned about these roadblocks, and is there a way that the Biden transition team can make these briefings, these intelligence and national security briefings, resume even without the GSA actually giving the green light, since we understand that they're not really the ones who control that?
Right. My impression is that until she gives the green light, that the President-elect Biden has no access to the presidential daily briefs, has no access to the employees at the National Security Agency or the CIA or any of those important intelligence entities. So nothing is happening in real time. Now, on the other hand, he can get intel, he can get input from experts who study the field and who are around, but he doesn't get sort of the live intelligence that would be best for the country. I mean, it seems as though our country right now is kind of, we're not as sort of nervous as we were about a terrorist attack because we've got other issues on our plate. But all the world can see that our country at the moment is in a bit of disarray, and that there's a very short period of time between now and when Vice President Biden will be inaugurated, and lots has to be done.
All right. Kathryn Dunn Tenpas, thank you.
You're welcome. My pleasure.